Good evening, everybody. It's Pete Morse. This is Christmas Eve, and we're having an open mic Zoom here. A whole bunch of different little things we're going to throw at you. Basically, Comanche's, Christmas stocking session here. Uh, what we have had going on is a series of pictures of different paint jobs, amazing ones. We're going to be talking about a safety spotlight thing that I've been working on, and maybe throw in a few other things. But for now, it's the old-fashioned who you are, what you are, and where you're from. Of course, I'm Pete Morris. I'm sitting here in Connecticut, and at the airport, and I haven't seen anybody flying around in the evening tonight here, but I kind of expect that somebody's going to fly by with a single red nose light, but I'm not sure when. But whoever it is left his hat on the couch behind me here.
It's Rich Bergman, Al Cajon, California, where it's scummy looking and raining, but nothing like you guys got up northeast. And
we're getting rain this evening, supposedly.
Yeah, we got showers. Showers here means that the cars are scummy tomorrow. So, but 9242 Papa up on Jack's, getting his landing gear done. I was lucky enough to hook a ride with Marty Hentz to Flagstaff to Lake Havasu. What a fun time! I'll let everybody else ID, and then I can tell you about it if nobody else is here.
Well, go for it. Tell us about it. How many showed up, and how successful was it?
They had 16 planes. This thing was put together really quick, as you all know.
Yeah.
We needed to get away from cabin fever. And I'm not used to riding right seat or back seat, but what the hell, I did it anyway. And I took my upgraded Garmin Pilot. I took 3 or 4 things to play with. And, but 16 planes were on the list to show up. Pretty close to 35 made it. And there was over 100 people, 2 dogs, kids, everything. And the restaurant there had one heck of a time keeping up with feeding us, but they did a beautiful job. The weather in and out from everywhere was really nice. And we all spent about 3 hours, and people lined up slowly but surely and went home. And there was people in there from New Mexico, Colorado, Utah. I think there was one from Wyoming, Nevada, Arizona, and all over California. That's what I picked up on.
Lake Havasu, that's kind of near the Four Corners, isn't it?
It's in kind of the middle of Arizona. Look up the Parker VOR in Arizona, and it's very close to that.
Yep.
And so anyway, I can see it's the only water you can see in Arizona. Sorry about that. 8,000 foot runway you couldn't miss. Marty did a beautiful job of flying his very nice 250, and me and one other guy whose plane is also up on Jack's. And anyway, absolutely wonderful. The hell with COVID-19. We had a blast. Just absolutely met a lot of people, talked to a lot of people about a lot of things, and it was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Was there the talk of doing some more fly-ins?
Yeah, they've got one scheduled for mid-January. Marty will be out of the country. I obviously won't be able to make it unless I can hook a ride. I'm going to go talk to some of the guys, the 5 Comanche guys over at Gillespie Field, and see if anybody's going. It's your standard. I got my credit card. Let's split up the gas. You know the drill.
Yep. Been there, done that.
Yeah, haven't we all? So anyway, really nice. The wind. We got a pretty good Santa Ana here in Southern California and in Arizona going. If you all know where the Santa Ana winds are. The cold ones are in the winter. They're just as windy as the warm ones late in the summer. And we had about a 20 knot going. And on the way back, we had about a 25 knot tailwind. And that plane was running 238 ground speed.
Wow.
God. Yeah, we started to drop out toward Palomar, KCRQ, north of San Diego, which is where we left and came back to. And I'm sitting in the back seat because I got the right front going, and so we switched, me and the other guy. And I'm looking over there, and I said, "Hey, Marty, we're going a little bit fast." And he goes, "Yeah," he says, "I won't even try and put the gear down on this." And I says, "You're going to do a nice and easy go around?" And he said, "You know what? That sounds like a really good idea." He called it in, flew over, went back to downwind, and then lined up, and beautiful landing. But boy, I'll tell you what, it was fabulous. Oh, a great day.
Terrific. I'm glad, very glad to hear that.
Yeah. We wish we could afford the gas to get out there to see you guys, but it's not reality at this point.
Well, as I understand it, there's a fair number of us that are trying to get to Sun and Fun in April. So, if you got an excuse to fly, that would be one of them.
Yeah, I don't, we'll see if my plane is done. I've never been to Sun Fun or Oshkosh, and I've been a pilot since 1993. It's about $2,300 round trip fuel from San Diego. And if you can't split it with anybody, you all know the drill on that too.
Yep.
So, but I'd love to come. I'd like to go to both of them once.
Yep. We went to Oshkosh when the Mid-States Tribe had the convention there. And, we flew into Fond du Lac instead of Oshkosh itself. But then we had transportation up to Oshkosh. We spent the day in Oshkosh also as part of the convention. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I'm an EAA member. I should go.
Yeah.
If you talk to CJ, CJ is all about setting up people so you can split the cost of that flight.
Yeah.
So you might be able to find 2 more people to join.
Yeah. Anyway, it was everybody had an absolute fun time.
Yep. We have in the Northeast here, we have a registration form for fly-ins, which is updated for each one, of course. And one of the things on the bottom was that if you do or do not have room for a passenger, if you have a shared seat, and
or if you don't have an
if you
airplane,
need a shared seat, and it's worked out pretty well.
That's a real good idea.
I think Oshkosh has that option as well, like Oshkosh itself.
Yep. Bernie Stumpf is on now. Well, he's not sitting there right now, but he and I very often ride together. We take a turn to see whose plane it is when we go to the fly-in, because I go every month. I go to a fly-in that I'm hosting or something, and so we've been swapping off. And I found it very interesting to be in a different Comanche. I've got a 250, and he has a 260B, I believe.
Yeah, that's what I have, the 260B also.
And we have very different ways of flying. He almost always files IFR, whatever the flight is. And I almost always go VFR. I take flight following and stuff like that. But
I'm a VFR pilot too, and we just went flight following.
Yeah. Well, I am an IFR pilot, but I don't file. I don't even file VFR. I just take off, connect with flight following, tell them where I'm going, and
exactly.
And it's just the different approach to from here to there is really interesting to ride with somebody different.
And the planes, the 250 and the 260B are just different enough, so you got to kind of pay attention.
Yep.
Yeah. Electric flap versus clicks, and a few things like that.
Yeah. Well, my 250, the one I have now, it has the electric flaps, but it does not have fuel injection like the 260 does.
Oh, okay. Marty's has fuel injection, but he doesn't. He has the manual flaps.
I actually wish I still had them. My old one did, and I
love the manual flaps.
I like to be able to dump the flaps as post haste.
I like the manual flaps, except sometimes I struggle to figure out where each notch is because they're not equal on the bar. And sometimes I can end up putting 2 stages out or landing and thinking that felt really weird. It felt like it fell out of the sky too quickly. And it's because I've only got 2 stages instead of 3, all 3 down, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the Johnson bar's nice, but I really need more time. And unfortunately, they've sold my my 180 here in the UK, so I will have no Comanche time until I get to America.
Yeah, well, I got nice and used to the manual flaps. I've flown everything from, my original plane was a Cherokee 140, and away I went through Warriors, Archers, Dakotas, and everything else that was single engine. And I got very, very used to it. And going to the electric flaps, I had come out of the Glasair 1RG, which was electric flaps. It was also stick and rudder, which was a lot of fun. But I can do it either way, right seat or left seat. Doesn't bother me.
See, now the 400 that I've got is an electric flap, so I'm gonna have to learn how that one works as well. Does the electric flaps in a Comanche, is it up and down, or is it you've got the 3 notches and you bring the
It's
selector into whichever
infinitely
notch?
variable. It goes until you stop it, and it's
Right.
yeah. I'm still getting used to my electric ones because, like I said, when I landed my earlier Comanche, as soon as the wheels were down, I dumped the flaps, and that kept me on the ground. It glued me to the ground. And
Right.
now these electric ones take probably about 5 seconds, maybe more, to
Yeah.
completely retard, come back. And, I end up floating a little bit. Very often I end up ballooning a little bit. And, I'm still getting used to it.
Yeah.
I went flying yesterday and I actually had a good landing.
Well, one thing about the electric flaps, Kristen here, is that if you're floating too much, you can just reach over and put them up. She'll settle
That's
right
right.
down on the runway.
Yeah. Well, what I've been doing now is just as I'm about to touch down, I'm committed to actually landing on the ground. That's when I hit the switch. And I'm still having to look for it because I'm not used to where it is. And
Right.
that throws me, that's what usually causes me to do something different.
Yeah. Kristen, there was only one twin, a 30 that flew into Havasu. Really nice airplane.
Well, that's too bad that the twins aren't better represented, but I've been into Havasu a number of times, just not with a bunch of Comanches. Needless to say, I'm not very close, so I didn't bother to come down, but I'm hoping for a fly-in somewhere this spring.
You would have enjoyed it. I think they're planning to do this once a month if they can. The next one is kind of like Kentucky Windage scheduled for the second weekend in January. So you can keep your eyes open. You can't miss 8,000 feet long. So.
Yeah, well, considering I'm up in Minnesota, I probably won't make it down to that one, but.
Oh, that's right. You're not in California anymore. Okay.
No, I'd have probably come down if I was in California.
Kristen, you guys are going to have to find some other Comanche peoples and make your own fly-in.
Yep.
Well, we've got a bunch up here. I mean, I've chatted a little bit with George Richmond about doing a, maintenance seminar or something up in this neck of the woods.
Yep.
When the weather gets better.
Is there any fly-ins down in sort of the Mid-South or Midwest, sort of your Arkansas area?
Not scheduled, Adam. The infrastructure is not there like it is in the Northeast. But that's the only reason.
That's an annoying problem because
it's not that hard to put something together. But
Well,
Arkansas is becoming a very, very likely settlement area for me.
Yep.
Well, that'll be a switch from the UK for sure.
Oh, it's exciting getting completely out of this bollocks.
I would consider I would consider flying into Las Cruces. I've done that before, and it's almost affordable. And but not much farther than that. It just gets to be way too much money.
Would you guys like to see the PowerPoint thing I put together about creating a fly-in?
Yes, because I would like to create one.
Share that with you real quick.
Yep. And actually,
Thanks.
Pete, if I can give you, well, you're bringing that up. So the way that the West Coast fly-in happened is that a lot of people saw the Martinsville, Virginia fly-in, which was a lot of people. It was 30 who registered and 21 that made it because we had ice all over the Northeast. And so PJ and Marty and a couple other people said, well, what do we need to do to get ours done? And I said, you know, you need to organize one. So I said, we can provide the support and you can use Facebook. They ended up just using Facebook and that worked out great. But we gave them some guidance about, you know, so if you're going to organize a fly-in, like initially they were like, we'll do Catalina Island. I said, well, how long is the strip at Catalina Island? And is everybody totally comfortable about flying across any water? And so they picked HII because it's got a long strip. It's easy to get to. It's got a great restaurant. It sort of ticked all the boxes. And you'll see that in Pete's presentation. Russ Wright has been putting together Comanche fly-ins down in the Florida area. And those have been really fun. And they're often breakfasts or lunches, just like a lot of the Northeast ones are.
I would
So,
like.
Mhm.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, CJ. I
Go
cut you
for
off.
it.
I thought you'd stopped.
Well,
No.
here's the fly-in thing. I hit the share thing kind of by accident right in the middle of CJ's talking. But
No, it's good,
this is
Keith. That's
also on my
totally good.
website, so you can get a hold of it right there. This it really is 10 easy steps. Now, here you go. What kind of fly-in is the first thing you got to figure out? Do you want to have lunch at an airport? Or do you want to visit an aviation? That's AOPA's headquarters right there. Want to go to a museum? That's the Owl's Head Museum, Transportation Museum in Maine. Do you want to go to a really neat place? This is a little airport up in New Hampshire. Or do you want a major event, like a whole weekend at
So
Nantucket?
that museum looks a lot like the Piper Museum at Lock Haven.
It is. I'm sorry, you're right. Owl's Head is a different one. You're right. That is Lock Haven. Okay, first you got to find a location that's relatively central. I used 1 to 2 hours as a guide as to who gets invited or where we go. Is there a local tribe member to help you do this thing? Is there adequate runway parking and size and stuff like that? Confirm that there is a restaurant nearby. And if there's anything extended about it, you need to worry about lodging. You don't have to make the reservation, but you have to find out if it's there. Talk to the FBO manager, walk around the airports. This is optional, but it does help to find the problems. Plan a parking area and meeting space and take care of whatever might come up as what ifs. Establish a rain date plan. In the Northeast, we plan everything for Saturday and then use Sunday as the rain date. But every so often, we end up using the following weekend as a rain date. Communicate to the tribe. Here's what we send out to the various members of the tribe to, invite them to it. That's a direct mail kind of thing, email. We have some kind of registration and response. We actually have a form that we fill out to respond and say, yes, I'm coming. Local fly airports, doing this is kind of optional because that opens the floodgates, but that's up to you. And then get it on the website to help publish it. Final plans 2 weeks ahead, confirm your plans, send out the email invitations. The week of the fly-in, send the second one to remind people, update them, get an estimated number of aircraft that are going to be there and let people know and begin looking at the weather patterns. I use the Weather Channel a lot for this because I can look at the 10 days ahead or whatever for a particular area. Then the day of, make your no-go decision. Sometimes the day before. And my caveat on that is this a day, this potential day, is this a day that I would want to fly an hour to get there? If I don't want to do it, then I don't think anybody else will either. And then communicate any change of plans. With our registration thing, we get emails, so those people all get information directly about anything that's going on differently, and they also get to participate in deciding about the weather. The day of the fly-in, be there early, bring your handheld, meet and greet everybody, and get them to help you move things around. Coincidentally, that's Ron Ward and Av Shiloh moving Av's plane, so just for the heck of it. Get help, and it also promotes mingling. That's the whole idea. Take lots of pictures. If you got a camera on your phone or something like that, that's good enough. If you're going to get more fancy, what the heck? And then give the restaurant account about a half an hour ahead so they know how many people are coming. If you have a chance, you get a group meeting in the hangar space over dessert after lunch. Introduce yourself, talk about yourself and your experience with Comanche. Introduce the FBO manager if you want. Have each person in attendance talk about themselves. It's sort of like we do with the Zooms. Who you are, where you are, and what you fly. point out interesting details about the choice of location. Why did you choose this particular place? Ask for ideas for future ideas and ask for volunteers to do that. Like I was just saying with the Havasu thing, take more pictures. And if there's any specific things about the airport that people need to know, that's the time to talk about it. For instance, that one up in New Hampshire is a single runway with no taxiway. So it means if you're going to take off to the north, you got to back taxi the whole runway. So we end up, doubling it up. Get two Comanches down there, one takes off and one waits a little bit and then that one takes off. And it frees things up. So you make arrangements. After lunch or departure, you encourage everybody to go out and take a look. That's that airport in New Hampshire that I was talking about. Take more pictures, get people to help move the planes around because sometimes it's uphill. You know how that is. And if you need to coordinate anything on your departure, use hand signals on a handheld, whatever. But remember that you're not ATC, particularly if you're at a towered airport. You don't want to be on the radio if you're at a towered airport. And then thank everybody that helped out make the thing happen. If you get a chance, you write a report. And we can put it in the Nor'easter newsletter. You could actually send it to ICS and maybe they would print it. But it's a good idea to let people know what happened. The thing about it, anyone who reads that report should be able to read that report and remember the day with satisfaction. They should enjoy all over again what they did. And then anyone who missed it should feel like they missed something really nice. And maybe they'll come to the next one. This is what we have for our listing on the website. That is actually the website page itself with our schedule, the one for this year with everything crossed out because of COVID. And this is the other places that we have been that are potential for, we keep a record of where we go so that we can go back, and have comments about it or whatever. And this is the registration form that we use. So you got your name and information up here, email, your tail number, your home field, just for interest, any comments you want to make. This was to get to go to Lakeland. I had added this part in here. For Sun and Fun, we'll have that same thing going on. And then the offer to share a ride. Do you have seats available? Are you looking for a ride or not this time? And then again, ride information down here. If you're going to offer someone a ride, it's helpful if we know approximately what your flight path will be, so you know where you're going to go near to. And that's it. That's the whole thing. If you need more help, call me. So how's that? That's the 10 easy steps of how to do a fly-in.
It's really interesting, Pete. If you could send me that that PowerPoint. Awesome.
It's on the web. Go to the website. There is a place on the website on the, I think, documents page, how to plan a fly-in. That whole thing is right there as a text kind of thing, not the PowerPoint.
Would anyone be interested then in a fly-in into Arkadelphia Airport in Arkansas if we go for it for the grand opening of my facility, because that's where it looks like it's going to be, with the hangars going to be finished in February or March?
Yeah, send me the information and I will get it out through my mailing list, which would be a large part of the eastern half of the United States.
Because I would love to get a massive row of Comanches in a big curved picture right in front of the new hangar we just opened, because it's going to be a brand new hangar. It's being built as we speak. Yep. So it's really exciting.
Actually, I think in addition to that, after Zach's fly-in didn't work out, it really kind of occurred to me that the area, within 100 or 150 nautical miles of, say, Louisville, is kind of an area that a good chunk of the Northeast, North Central and Southeast and South Central could actually reach, with 3 or 4 hours of flying. It would be interesting to kind of look at the major centers of Comanches, which kind of leaves California out because it's like way out there.
You mean geographically, of course.
You know what?
I'm leaving that open, but if you look at say 3-hour flight from Dallas, draw a circle around, just say, somewhere in southeastern Wisconsin, western Massachusetts, and northern Florida, and kind of see if, where's sort of the closest to all of those things.
I would also suggest, if you want to draw people from a distance, if you can arrange a place that they could stay if they want to.
Absolutely. I
So,
mean,
fly in on Friday, stay
there's a
overnight,
gorgeous-
have the thing on Saturday, leave on Sunday, that kind of thing.
there's a gorgeous Hampton Inn, and we'd probably allow people to store the planes in our hangar if we've got space for
Yeah.
it. It's
But if you had a block of rooms, like even just 10 rooms or so at the Hampton Inn that were available.
It's a very well known popular college town. It's the biggest aviation college in Arkansas is Henderson, and it's actually in Arkadelphia. The airport's quite well known for that, but there's not that much else going on at Arkadelphia, so there's very little reason that Hampton Inn wouldn't jump at the and it's a gorgeous hotel as well. They would jump at the opportunity to have 15 people descend on them.
That might encourage somebody that's thinking about a 6-hour flight to get there.
And probably set up a bulk buy, like a buy deal on fuel as well. Just some real nice attractions to actually come down. We'll have I'll probably try and get my 400 out ready so that people can actually see it, even though it won't be flyable. Might be able to truck it down there. So who knows what we could do, but it's really exciting because I've been talking to the Arkadelphia Airport manager, and I've been talking to the AMP that wants to do it with me, and it's really exciting as to what might happen.
Hot Springs is not far from Arkadelphia.
Where's that?
Okay.
Hot Springs.
One of the things that we were going to do tonight is premiere. Somebody's got an echo thing going on for me here. We're going to premiere the spotlight, safety spotlight. We're going to premiere the spotlight. I'm going to go my big stick. I'm going to mute everybody just so we don't get all that feedback going on. The whole idea right now is to present for your individual comments the thing I put together for Safety Spotlight, and I'm going to share that with you right now. I got to first take care of a transition thing here, because I don't want it to advance all by itself. There we go. Okay, all right, it's good. Apply to all, we're done. All right, so here we go. These are the different ones that I have put together already. Each one of them is 5 to 6 different bullet points. And the whole idea is to jog people's thought processes before they go fly planes. And the way it's set up in here, if I click on this one, it jumps to that topic. If I click on this one, it jumps to that topic. But what I'm going to do tonight simply is go down the whole deal. There's, I don't know how many, there's a whole bunch of slides. So if I go to, for instance, if I go to this one, there's fuel management. And these are the bullet points that I came up with. Obviously you measure the fuel so you know exactly what's in there. And then use the fullest tank when you land. If you believe your fuel gauge, go for it. Time in the tanks. This down here are my notes on a flight that I took of when I was on a particular tank, when I switched, and how much I put in at the end, or how much time it was that I took out of the tank. Down here, I put in 24.4 gallons when I landed, and it worked out to being 10 gallons per hour. Then rotate your fuel selector. This is a suggestion from CJ, over the top. So from here, over the top to there. This is the old 250. Actually, no, it's my new 250 has 4 tanks. If if you reach down with your hand and try and go this way, you're going to get to this point and you'll have to grab it again because your hand won't go any further. So if you go over the top, you're going to go from one main to the other, or you can go from the main to the auxiliary, or from this main all the way around to that auxiliary. But if you try to go through here, like I said, you got to let go. And then, thanks to CJ's experience, have a flashlight right there close by so that at night, if you have to do that, you can actually look down and see that this switch is where it belongs as opposed to somewhere in the middle.
I should point out that you probably should say that this is for single engine Comanches only, or expand it for the twins, one or the other, because this is clearly not particularly applicable to the twins.
Okay, I will take that in advice. Thank you, Kristen. I have yet to have the experience of operating a twin. I've flown in one, but I have not operated one. Okay, the next group is finding where you are.
Well, before Pete, I'm sorry, I've been trying to get a word in. Before we move on, especially since we've got somebody with Kristen's experience here. Hi, Kristen. And I think I saw Hans Niebert and Joe Alfonso and a couple other people. Hello, everybody. Merry Christmas. What should we be doing with the twins? Like, what would be the information to provide people?
Well, the two big ones that differ is land and take off on the mains.
Which I think is true for the singles as well, right?
It's preferred,
yeah,
definitely preferred.
But there's no issue of fullest main. It's the mains, you know.
Got it.
Left main for left engine, right main for right engine. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The twins are also well positioned. The ergonomics of it is such that flashlight is a lot less necessary, because if you can, you know, split your index finger and your middle finger, reach down and touch the two fuel selector knobs, you're on the main. You know, because they swing outboard. You know,
right.
You know, they can't both inboard on the mains, and they're swung on the outboard for the tip tanks, and nobody, I don't care how big your hands are, you know, is going to be able to get your forefinger and your middle finger on the heads of the selectors if you're in the aux tanks. So it's particularly easy just to reach down, you know, and check them.
Nice.
Some discussion on twins, especially with tip tanks, as to what you know, what the appropriate fuel management is for longer trips, i.e., you know, you get up into cruise and you get on the aux tanks, or if you have tips, you get on the tip tanks. You burn those down until you're done with them. And then you switch to the aux tanks and you burn those down till you're done with them. And then you're on the mains, and you better be within an hour to an hour and a half of your destination, or you're dragging it in.
Yeah, whenever I switch tanks, you know, even in daylight, I do it by touch because I go from D10 to D10, but I also look at it and verify. So
in a single, that's entirely appropriate. You know, with a twin, there's no way it's not correct. You know, with using the 2-finger method.
Yep, good. All
You
right,
know,
I will
just
do
not
something.
physically possible.
I'll do something to try and deal with the twins aspect. Okay, next section, finding where you are. This is in case you're lost. You know, have a flight plan again for, you know, the purpose is to make a plan to where you're going. I do not like, because my partner always does it. I do not like direct. I have been able to get direct and some angel flights where I've gone, you know, 400 miles direct. But that's with their blessing. but I don't like it because I don't have a reference to where I am. If I want to say to ATC, I'm 4 miles from the Putnam VOR, that's nice. I want to say if I'm 47 miles from Newport, New Hampshire, that doesn't help them very much in finding me. So, direct it, I think it's always best to have a flight plan. And then use your GPS with the track up, because then what you see in the background on the GPS, the map, reflects what you see out the window. And then better than that, take out your sectional and set it so that, we're flying southwest right now. And so southwest is up on the map. So what I see below me should, I should be able to find it on this map looking out the window. That's the whole idea.
What's a
Once you found
sectional?
you're looking out the window, identify the ground features that you can see and find them on the map and identify them that way. If you can't see enough, climb. Get up there where you can see what's going on. And if you're still not sure about what you're looking at, because the nose is in the way, then turn and bank to see what's over on that side or the, for instance, if you're the pilot, you got to see what's on the right-hand side, bank to the right and take a look, or look behind you. And then if you really still can't find yourself, oops, that's when you contact ATC for help. They will give you a squawk code, they will find you on the radar, and if you want, they will give you vectors to wherever you want to go, as opposed to hitting nearest on the GPS. Questions?
Sounds like what I did in the 90s.
Yep.
And then we came up with the iPads.
Yeah. This is, a lot of these things came out of the pilot companion thing I did for the Baltimore convention. And it's very similar. I call it the real weather. Again, if you have a flight plan, then you can identify where you're going to go. Take that flight plan and enter it into 800 Weather Brief. The flight plan I have here is flightplan.com, and the same flight plan now is in Weather Brief. And then using that Weather Brief, you can look at your flight. In this case, I was going from Danielson to Randall Field in New York. And as you can see, I'm just outside the bad stuff. So it looks like it's pretty good. It doesn't look like a big problem. If I had this in motion, oops, I'm sorry about that. If it was in motion, this whole green thing is moving slightly in that direction. So I'm probably going to be okay. Read through the NOTAMs, particularly for the destination. And then check the METARs. Now this is a cool thing here. There's the flight path right there, the white line. But look all around it. All of those blue dots are IFR, and the red ones are low IFR. So maybe that beautiful, clean, beautiful thing off to the right, north of the flight path, is not all that great. It's very helpful to have looked at this. And then, of course, here are the METARs that are reflected right there along the route. Next step, look at the TAFs. All those yellow dots are TAFs that are available. So you can take a look at what's going on. You can find out what they're expecting up here in Poughkeepsie. No, that's Pittsfield, Mass, or over here in Poughkeepsie or back in Bradley. And you can find out what the weather they expect to be instead of trying to rely on these graphic pictures. Then you make a go or no go decision based on your personal minimums. Is this a day I really would want to try and do this flight? And if it's not, come up with some ideas. You could reroute the flight. You could wait for the weather to pass. Check other problem areas. If there's an area that you think might be a little iffy, take a look at it in more detail. Go another day, or even take the car. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do. Okay, that's the end of that section. Questions, comments?
We
well,
sort of, go ahead.
I think that it would probably the first thing if you're doing a presentation like this is to find out how many people are using an iPad and what software, or some type of a tablet.
Yep.
What you just ran through was typically what I did before they invented iPads.
Yeah.
And so there's probably a lot of us that are kind of using a little bit of a different system. And the one thing that when I'm teaching instruments, especially to somebody who might be, have a business schedule, I really emphasize that, the very first thing that they need to do is figure out when it is they have to make the go or no go decision. And that's based on, how you can get to where you need to be, which is often back home again.
Yeah.
When do you need to make that decision? So take an example I would use when I was teaching out in California. Okay, you've flown to Reno for the weekend, but you've got a surgery that you need to perform on Monday morning. When's the last time that you can realistically either A, rent a car, or B, get on the airlines? Because that becomes then the deadline to make your no-go decision. Because where people get themselves into the most trouble is they get themselves past where they have any other option to get where they need to be other than take the airplane. And then they talk themselves into flying. And that's when they get, into a situation where they don't have any outs.
Yeah, that's almost as bad as the adage or the action of flying, taking off to take a look. Sometimes taking a look can get you killed.
The amount of times I have been told to do this at work and had to look like a nervous idiot saying no because I won't randomly take off in an airplane in weather I know I'm not comfortable in.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why pilots have this attitude, or pilots, especially when it's not them flying the plane. They say, "Oh, just go up and have a look, and if it's bad, just turn back."
Yeah.
No. I think
Okay.
I'm fine, thanks.
Next
Yeah, it was
section.
a little bit of a different reality when you're being paid to fly for a living.
No,
Yeah.
that's a different story entirely.
But you also, in that situation, you probably have better equipment on board.
Mm.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Yep. Loss of power. This one was real quick for me. I threw it together, so to speak. First, fly the plane. Pitch for your best glide speed. I'm thinking of putting in what that the target speed might be, but I'm not so sure that's a great idea. Choose a landing spot. This is the first thing that immediately, that whether you're going to try and fix it or not, choose a spot, because you got to have a plan. And then whatever you just did, this is an old adage, whatever you just did, then make that power go away, undo it. I'm admitting people here while I'm talking. Very often, lack of power is lack of fuel. Turn on the pump and switch tanks. And if the prop is still windmilling, it probably will start, unless you put this, switch the tanks in between. Declare an emergency. That will give you all kinds of power. You can talk to ATC about it. You can get on 121.5. That will help find you. But don't forget the nearest tower or CTAF. You can talk to them too. If you're right over an airport, you know the frequency, tell them that you have a problem and you're coming down. Everybody get out of your way. And then land wherever possible. And it's wherever, it's not whenever. Comments?
After number 4, I think there's a couple other steps just to make sure, pulling on carb heat or alternate air, possibly doing a mag check, go through the rest of your emergency checklist.
Okay.
Should be 4.1, and 4.2 is if you can't get it going again, and you're in a single, grab onto that prop handle and pull that puppy all the way back.
Yep.
It'll have a dramatic change in your glide path.
That will, that's driven by the oil. That will come back if it's still windmilling.
Yeah. Have you ever tried that?
No, but I've never done it without the engine being running.
Yeah, you can do it. You can do it with the engine being running. Go up and pull that thing, you know, next time you're playing with your airplane, you know, pull the prop back or pull the throttle back to idle, set up a glide speed, and then reach over and pull that prop back.
Yeah. And I just want to, I just want to step in here. Mhm.
And you'll feel like you cut loose a parachute.
Good.
Yep. So I just want to make it really clear here that we had not planned to go through this because we really wanted to make sure that this kind of thing, we would normally have this kind of thing be presented by a CFI, CFIIMEI. This is not
definitely a work in progress. It is not
yeah.
final.
Yep. And we hadn't really planned to do it. Tonight was planned to just be open mic, have people come in. We happen to have both Kristen and Hans Newbert here, both of whom have, and I'm happy to see you guys both here at the same time because Hans had brought up some really pretty amazing thoughts on how to handle the Oleo's drought housing situation. So hi, Terry. Happy holidays. And so I just wanted to welcome everybody and just make that one clarification that although we typically have presenters to talk about the things that they're expert on, Pete and I are not CFIs. So this is really just something that we thought we would put up at the beginning and once it had been vetted.
Yeah, and I definitely am thoroughly enjoying all the comments because it helps a lot. Okay, the next.
Well, so.
You don't want to keep going?
Well, it would be nice to say Merry Christmas to some of the people coming on. We said it would be an open mic. So I think what you're doing is great. And I think we, go ahead and run through it we've got Kristen on, and she's the best in the business. I mean,
yeah,
there are very few people that know more than Kristen Winters about flying Comanches. If anybody.
Halfway through with this.
I'm listening to what Kristen is saying, and I think it's probably pertinent I book some instruction time either with her or with someone who knows Comanches, because almost everything she said is entirely opposite to what my instructor was always telling me. And that instructor is the same instructor who got absolutely berated by the aircraft owner for teaching me things. So I'm slightly concerned that I might have learned or picked up bad habits that might risk myself in flight, and I'd quite like to get those sorted.
Yeah, that really is a whole nother topic. Yeah, Hank was getting on that too. All right, safety, pre-flight gotchas, use a checklist. Don't go by memory. Impediments, whatever, or foreign object stuff. I have tried to taxi out without moving the chocks, and it didn't work very well. Note any changes in the aircraft, frost, dents, loose, missing hardware. Of course we do this, but pay attention to this. Verify the fuel levels. And while you're at it, choose which tank is the fullest so you can start out with that one. Secure everything. I was going to get a picture here of a slightly open baggage door as a reminder, because I have done that. And then have a flight plan. This is one that I really kind of call important to me. Have a flight plan in hand, and on it, write down the expected frequencies. When I'm leaving from here, I write down the tower or the approach frequencies for Providence and for, because that's the one that covers our airport here at Danielson. And I write down the frequency for Bradley, which is now Yankee, because that's who I'm probably going to talk to. I don't want to have to drag out the sectional and find out what the frequency is. I write it down ahead of time. If you have a flight plan, you've got a piece of paper, therefore you can write it down. Comments?
I think it's very situational.
Yep. These are things that I think it'll jog your thought process so that you just don't walk out to the plane thing. You kick the tires and light the fires.
Can't you have a lot of those frequencies on your iPad with whatever planning program you use?
Yep.
Yeah, and it really depends. I mean, for me, all right, I'm based in an airport north of Minneapolis. And there are a number of other GA airports in the Twin Cities. And if I'm just going to one of those, I need to have absolutely every frequency programmed before I take off. Comanches go too damn fast. You know, on a 20 nautical mile flight, you do not have time to screw with frequencies. On the other hand, I went before Thanksgiving, I went VFR to California, and my next stop was going to be in Wyoming. You know, about 5 hours later. So I wasn't really all that concerned, especially since I wasn't 100% sure exactly which airport I was going to stop at. You know, I was not too concerned about setting up frequencies in Wyoming when departing Minnesota. You know, so you know, again, when I teach, I put the caveat in is, you know, how long are you going to be landing? I mean, mentally get yourself into the flight, you know, and if you're hopping, you know, from one metro airport to another, then you better really have your ducks in a row before you ever take the active runway to depart. You know, again, if you're out west and you're going from a non-towered airport to a non-towered airport 3 miles away, yeah, you know, there's other things to be worried about, like weather.
Yep. Okay, going on. Next
Yeah.
question is
The only comment that I would add to Kristen's comment is the one Kristen made earlier, which is having just put in an Avidyne 540 and coming from a Garmin 650, and before that, coming from an airplane with no nav at all. It's situational.
Yep.
So I think putting this is looking like a particular pilot's set of personal guidelines.
Yeah, you're right. The next section I came up with was the SIC responsibility, second in command. Because I have flown with other people, and sometimes there's been a delay in things because you don't understand who's doing what. Define the roles. Who is the PIC? Who does the stuff with the radios? Who does the fuel management? Then anything that you're going to do as second in command, identify it before you do it, because the PIC needs to know what's going on. Then positive aircraft control. This is left over. This is from training flights. Your plane, my plane. So these people know who's doing what. The second in command monitors everything. Just keep an eye on, make sure everything is going the way it's supposed to go. You have a free hand because you're not flying the plane, so you can write down what the air traffic control tells you to do as they're received, including, you can double copy the clearance if there's a clearance involved. And then follow the flight plan on your flight plan itself or on the sectional, whatever. Keep your finger on the map, so to speak, so that if anything comes up, you have an immediate idea of where you are in your plan. And then if you're going to do anything, if something's coming up that needs to be done, you advise the PIC verbally before you do the change. Comments?
You're lucky. You have friends. I have poodles. Dog is my co-pilot, and they're completely useless. Completely useless.
All right.
Yeah, but they're way cuter than most people, and they talk a lot less.
Yeah, but you have to watch the weight and balance because they keep shifting around.
Oh, well, with a twin Comanche, you're always out the front of the CG anyway, so what the hell?
This is something that I've done. On the right there is my log that we carry in the plane for whenever we put fuel in or oil or whatever. You notice a couple of places it says, this many gallons plus a quart of oil, like halfway down the list there, 30.2 gallons and 1 quart went in on that particular time. And then over on the right, we have the Hobbs at the time that it was done and the tack time. And just for our own, amusement, we put the hours that we flew. This is another thing that's very helpful if you want to try and figure out what your fuel use really is. Always fill it to some consistent mark. It could be 1 inch from the neck, or it could be to the necks, or you could fill it all the way, depending on what you want to do. But if you try and measure it with a dipstick or something like that, you realize that you're not really going to measure the exact amount because the tank is tipped with the wing and it's not shaped like a square box. It's got some edges or some curvature to it. Then calculate the GPH. Take how many gallons you put in and the elapsed time of the hob, and you know exactly what it is. My plane right now is 10 gallons per hour. This is your rate, the way you do it. It includes everything from startup through the flight to the landing and the shutdown. So all your use of the engine is in this gallons per hour. Your rate then can be used for planning. You can add 10%. Like right now, if I'm going to fly for an hour, I know it's going to take about 10 gallons, and I can add another 0.1 just for safety. And then one more adding for reserve, add a half an hour or 30 or 45 minutes worth of more fuel. At 10 gallons per hour, half an hour is going to be 5 more gallons. Then, note de belle. Fuel gauges only confirm that there is some fuel. It does not tell you exactly how much is in there. It only tells you there is some. Okay? Open for comment.
Well, I'd like to take a moment to greet some people. And Terry's asked if anybody runs lean of peak. But yeah, so I'd like to just acknowledge a few people. So Kristen, I'm just going to go down my list and say hello to everybody and ask if you, you know, this is Christmas. This is our chance to be together and open mic. So I want to just say hi particularly to Kristen Winter and thank you for the support you've given the Comanche community and the presentations you've given us this year. To Adam Height, who's one of our youngest members, who's trying to get over here from the UK. Kristen, sorry about that. You were about to say something?
Not really. I mean,
okay.
My only comment on that particular one was I entirely endorse Pete's method of record keeping when you have more than one person flying the airplane. That becomes really key to, you know, sort out who's doing what with the dang plane. You know, if you're the only one that's flown the airplane for 15 years, which is pretty much what's gone on with Maggie, it's a little less critical, but I mean, Pete nailed it for anybody that's sharing a plane.
I did that when I was the only pilot too, and I did it for my own information. From that, I would be able to pick up if I'm using more fuel than I had been before, or if I'm using more oil than I did before. And that gives me both the fuel rate per hour. It also gives me how many hours per quart. So it's a check on the performance of the airplane. But then I'm anal, so what the heck?
Well, you know, there's a reason I didn't become an accountant. So, I mean, I don't do that, though I do have a pretty good idea of what my airplane does burn per hour, you know, fuel wise and fuel wise. But, you know, I admire the people that can make more of a science out of this than I can. I'm just not wired that way.
Okay, know your fuel is what we just did. The other three that I have still to go if you want to. Flight at night.
Yeah.
This is something some people kind of fudge a little bit. You know, you do 2 or 3 night landings on your own. You're up there by yourself, but you don't really do the 3 in the 90 days. And then you've had this opportunity to fly with somebody. You went out to like Nantucket for the day, but you're coming back after dark and you're no longer legitimate. You're no longer legal because you haven't done your 3 flights in the 90 days, 3 landings, rather. So be sure that you got them. Then it's a good idea if you're going to fly at night, get some practice on instrument flying because basically at night you're going to be on instruments unless you have a really good clear night and nice horizon. You know, if you're going to, I recommend using filing a flight plan if you're flying at night, using nav aids, not direct. Be aware of the en route freezing levels around here. It can get you. For your own information on your flight plans you've got, put down things that you're going to expect to see on your flight. You would do this if you're doing a VFR anyhow. If you're going to fly to, for me from Danielson up to Newport, New Hampshire, I'm going to be looking for Mount Wachusett, just north of Worcester. I'm going to be looking for Mount Monadnock near Keene, and I'm going to be looking for the windmill towers just south of the airport. So I'm flying by visual references. I don't have to use, the compass or anything like that. But at night, you don't have them. The only things you have that you can see are beacons or cities or, the reflection off of water or something like that. This can be helpful if you can be, have a list of places that you could check just real quick to see what the conditions are on the ground for visibility. If you're having trouble seeing the ground, things are starting to look a little fuzzy. You may want to check to see what the dew point is and things like that. Be prepared for sudden IMC. You can't see the clouds until you're in them, unless there's a lot of light going on. And then be ready to reverse course back to VFR. Main thing is always have an out. Know where the nearest airport is or ask ATC for help. Okay?
Hello, everybody. This is Terry. I just texted in a question to you guys, and that is my 260B has a redone engine with about, I think, 30 hours on it. And everybody in the world gives a different opinion as to when the engine is actually broken in. Is there a common consensus among the Comanche tribe?
Okay, everybody, get your popcorn out. So Terry, this question actually just came up on the Piper Comanche Facebook group, and you've got Krista Winter and Hans Newbert here, and I'm looking who else. You've got some fantastic people in the room. I'm going to grab the Lycoming brochures and paste the links into the window and shut up. But the other person who's just gone through breaking in a new window is, hey, Gloria, is that you?
Yep.
Can you hear me? I'm never good at that.
You did it. You're perfect and you're loud and clear.
Yay.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Gloria.
for me, when I broke in my engine, oh, there's an echo. It was when you had to watch the oil. When it stopped burning oil, you were on your way.
I think it's Hans Pittner who's the echo's coming from. His name lights up in green when it echoes.
Oh, yeah. So, they give you a pretty good idea from you're breaking it in what it should be. But for me, it was watching the oil. And at a certain point, it just stopped using any oil. And, that's when I knew we were there.
I've read
Gloria's answer
several
is
things. Go ahead.
Gloria's answer is the classic answer. If you happen to have an engine monitor, you will note from the first hour forward what your CHTs are. And when your CHTs drop off is also a very good indication that you've broken in the cylinders.
I've heard both of those, and I wasn't sure. Mine was burning oil, and now it's down to, I think, a quarter to half a quart an hour. But the ICS, that big Comanche manual, says to expect to burn, I think, a quarter of a quart an hour in a regular broken-in engine.
I would say closer to a quart in 10 hours.
Okay.
Or better. A little bit depends on the engine.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
See,
I think so too.
Mine has 20 or 30 hours on it, and we just did the annual, and all of the cylinders with the compression test were up in the high 70s, except for the number one, which is at 70. So that has me concerned also.
Well, the compression doesn't really tell you much about break-in. So that's not you know, the compression test is really not a good snapshot. It's a trending instrument. You know, those are numbers that only make sense in looking at trends. The you know, what I'd be interested in is the CHTs when you're running it, and it sounds like it's still burning a little bit too much oil to me.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, mine started to burn what Kirsten was talking about, like you know, I'd start to get 10 hours from it, and then it was like, we're there. I just wanted to, if I could just jump back for one quick comment on the night flight. I would just like to tell everyone one of the best things you can do. It happened to me. I don't usually fly at night, but I was flying and came into an airport with a lot of snowbanks and realized that my landing lights were cockeyed and they weren't bright. So my suggestion to everyone is put some LED lights in and just know how your landing lights are working before you go out and do a night flight.
I would add to that for folks that fly infrequently at night, check your instrument lights. Because
Yeah, your nav.
you know, it's happened more than once that people have gotten into, you know, night flight for the first time in 2 years and find out that they have no instrument lights. That should be part of a pre-flight for flight at night.
So when you mention obviously lighting at night, obviously if you've ever been on a phone when you're in a dark area, it dazzles your eyes. When you've got instruments like Garmin GI275s or G5s, obviously quite a bright instrument, but you still need to see the rest. Do they have a day-night mode where they're less bright at night than they are in day, or do you just have to deal with and hope they're not so bright that they dazzle you? Because I've only ever flown G5s in the daytime, so.
I don't have experience with, you know, all possible Garmin units. My experience is that they usually automatically dim at night.
Ah, okay.
And so you don't really have an option of setting it yourself.
So you don't have like a day-night switch like you've got on some PA-28s and things like that?
Well, you know, in the old days, you know, back when all the avionics worked the same, there was frequently, you know, a radio rheostat where you could set the level of the lights in your avionics.
Hmm.
That seems to have gone by the wayside.
Yeah.
But, you know, I have not sampled all possible versions of avionics, so I can't, you know, I can't say beyond that.
Thanks, Kristen.
While we're on engine break-in, Linda, do you want to go ahead and add your question in? And actually, Terry, I'm about to paste into the chat window a big paragraph from Lycoming, if it'll let me do that. And then do you feel like you've got a sense right now as to what else you might want to be looking at? And actually, Terry, before I stop, did you run your engine really hard? They would have given you your new engine with mineral oil, and they would have asked you to run it hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, go ahead.
I ran a little bit hard, and the guy, when he first started it up, after we built it, he basically, I'll say, floored it right away when he started it up. And I have run it at high, but not super high, because other people said be nice to it.
I'm going to defer to Kristen
no.
on that. And Gloria.
Yeah, do not be nice to it.
Yeah.
I'm concerned based on that you've glazed the cylinders. And there's more than one way to break in cylinders. So what I'm about to say is not necessary, you know, should not be taken as gospel. But the couple of 3 engines that I've been involved in overhauling in the field, usually what we did was after hanging it on the airplane and setting everything up while it was cold, we'd fire it up, run it at idle for a minute and shut it back down and let it cool completely. And we do that about 2 more times. And then we would take off and basically fly wide open at about 3,000 feet for a couple hours.
Well, we sort of had that with mine in that the guy who rebuilt the engine, there's a cable that goes out to the prop controller up in the front of the airplane, and he didn't tighten it off enough. And we went out to Santa Paula to get gas. We started the engine and started flying. That cable came disconnected, and we were running at full RPM all the way back. That may have done a little breaking in.
Full RPM is good.
This is Gloria.
Full power is better.
They
Well,
told me to fly it like you stole it.
Well, at that time, we were vacillating back and forth between being really pissed and just wanting to get home.
I think all of us can understand the piss. That would have been a bit of a shocker to not just have lost prop control, but to be forced into full RPMs on your new engine.
Well, this guy had done a few other things, like we found it out at different points in times, but the mag, there's 2 nuts that hold each one on, and he hadn't tightened them completely. And I ended up with the bottom inside of my cowling full of oil. And then another thing that he'd done is there's, I think, a 9/16 nut up on the front right-hand side of the engine by the prop. And he hadn't tightened that all the way either. And so he got another oil bath. And then on the Comanche, I don't know how many of you noticed it, but on the bottom, just I guess back of the pilot's area, there's a series of rivets on the bottom of the fuselage, which are kind of like, I'll say, chevron shaped. And he hadn't caught those either. So we were a little bit unhappy with the man. And we haven't actually told him, but when other people at Whiteman say, what were your results? And we say, well, we won't say anything, but here's what we experienced.
Mm-hmm.
So that, having this one cable go twing, and all of a sudden I'll say the RPM or the tact went all the way up. Is like, not another one, not something else.
Good Lord. That is disconcerting. What would be the advice of the group here as far as so in essence, Terry, your feeling is not just has your engine break-in been proceeding normally, but is this more of a question of if you experienced a situation like this where the work done left you concerned about how carefully it had been performed, what would be the appropriate thing to do next? Is that kind of a rephrasing of your question?
No. I was the break-in was one question. The other was just me whining.
Those are some pretty significant events, Terry. I don't think you're whining.
Well, fortunately, there's another guy who's on here on and off, Bob Capiola, who's at Whiteman. And he's had many, many, many years of Comanches, and he is the one you go to. And he's the one that found a bunch of these things. And so I don't know what happened, but my screen just switched all over. And so he's the one I go to on everything. He found a lot of those other little leaks that I didn't.
So you feel like your airplane's been looked over by a good hand?
You betcha.
Good deal.
Have you heard have you heard the story of Bob's twin?
Negative.
He had 2 singles, and I'll try and do this quickly for everybody. Bob at Whiteman found there was a hangar where a guy had a twin, a Comanche twin, and at some point in time he'd crunched it a little and the wing was tweaked. So the guy bought a new wing, had it installed, and there were lots of other things, I'll shorten it a lot, which were really messed up, and it sat in the hangar for I think 20 some years. And Bob heard about it, but he didn't know what all the stuff was. And so Bob bought this twin. I hope I'm not letting his information out for $5 grand. And so he went in there and opened up the hangar, It had two brand new engines that were, what do you call that when you pour oil or whatever in them? And all new,
Pickled. They were
pickled
pickled.
and all new parts that the guy bought that never been installed. So over 2.5 years, Bob put the airplane back together and also switched from 50 pounds of Bendix radios to the new, what's the new, not Knight and the other ones that everybody uses. And he installed it all and he got it working. And several people came along and signed him off and said it was the best work they'd ever seen. And now he flies all over with a big grin on his face.
You would if you got a plane that cheaply.
I'm sorry?
You would if you got a plane like that for $5,000.
Well, I spent 2.5 years and yeah, he
Yeah.
probably put, I think 50 or 60 of his own in it. Because he
You probably-
rebuilt the airplane and
That
got it painted.
that plane would be something you'd never want to let go after doing that much work and doing that with it. You must love that thing.
I think that's a 69C model. I think possibly turbo. I think I may have talked to the original owner about 10 years ago. He was asking me
It's
questions.
turbo normalized. And I say, hey, my B is as fast as him. And he says, not when you get up to 20,000 feet.
Your B is actually faster below 8,000.
Right. But he just loves it. He's always, for 2.5 years, you always knew where he was. He was in the hangar working on that airplane.
What is the reason for vast majority of Comanches only being turbo normalized rather than being turbocharged?
Because the engines were never designed and the airplane was never designed originally to be turbocharged. That's why.
So turbocharging a 720 or a 540 would cause damage that would probably be bad for reliability, or
it's all an
There's a
STC afterwards. I mean, if you're going to turbocharge an airplane to have, full-time turbocharging working, you have lower compression ratios and you have, automatic controllers, that control the amount of boost. And usually the engines are boosted on takeoff. Piper Navajos are an example from Piper of airplanes that were designed originally to have turbocharging. So instead of like an 8.5 to 1 compression ratio, the engines are closer to like a 7.1.
would that result in a lower fuel burn then?
No. Your takeoff manifold pressure might be something like 82 or 42 inches. And the turbos are just working all the time. So cruise settings in a Navajo is something typically like 32 inches and 2,200 RPM. That's, somewhere around 65 to 70%. But they were designed from the get-go to run turbocharged engines, and they have controllers in them. So, you don't have to set power. You just run the props all the way, the throttles all the way forward, and the system sets the manifold pressure.
Interesting, thank you. What's the FAA document called that shows what STCs are available for certain aircraft?
It's the STC list.
Because when I search in for the STC list for the 24-400, nothing comes up.
No STCs?
I just don't know where to look for the STC list because I've never done it before.
FAA.gov.
Okay.
Search supplemental type certificates, and then it will ask you if you want to search their database. Then you can go ahead and search their database.
Okay, here we go. So it's the installation on the airplane supplemental type certificates.
Well,
search, there you go.
The FAA is not got the world's most up-to-date website, shall we say. So you're going to get a list of all of the ones that apply. And so you got to sit and scroll through them and see which ones talk about turbocharging instead of, installing your Garmin 430 in one. You'll go through about 2 pages of them.
It'd be interesting to have a look to see just what people have done in general to the aircraft and what modifications people have made and see if there's any others that stand out that go, oh, that might be a good idea.
Yeah, I'll keep you busy for a few hours.
Hey, everybody, Ed Cullen, Rajay was approved on an STC.
A what?
The
Rajay
Rajay.
turbocharging system. It's like a second throttle.
Oh, yeah, yeah, the Ray turbo normalizing system is SDC'd for the 250 Comanche.
I don't know that I would recommend it.
Yeah, it's in there somewhere as an approved STC.
They're also approved on the PA24 400 for both the A1As and A1B engines.
That's true.
The turbochargers on Bob's airplane are Ray J's, and he actually has controllers for them in the cockpit.
Yeah, they're a second throttle.
Yes.
Yeah, guys, I think there's also in this thing about breaking an engine in and all that stuff. You know, if you have chrome cylinders, you can expect to have a lot longer break-in time. That's just normal. And what I've found too is with several airplanes that I've had, that as you go through about 25 hours on the oil, your consumption is very low. And then after 25 hours, it starts to build up more and more, and which I consider as the oil's wearing out. But it's still perfectly safe at 50 hours. It's just, you'll have more consumption because of it.
It's interesting to note as well that the PA24 400 STC is only for twin turbo and not for one turbo on its own. Which that
Well,
must make an absolute monster of an airplane.
it probably has to do, well, it's just two little turbos instead of one big turbo.
So I imagine each turbo deals with one side of the engine or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. The issue in that case comes down more to space in the cowling. If I had to guess, I'd say that there just wasn't enough space in the cowling to fit one monster turbo.
No, because it's already packed in quite a lot with the 400, isn't it?
Right. So that's probably why there's two little turbos instead of one monster one.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's none of them are turbocharged. It's all for the 400. There's no turbocharging. It's just turbo normalizing.
Well, yes. I mean, when I say turbocharged, there's no Comanche that is anything other than turbo normalized. But in common parlance, we refer to that as a turbocharged engine.
Yeah.
Yeah. We usually don't get in the weeds for,
And the last Comanches that were being made, the 260s, you see a lot of them sometimes called the 260 TC. Were there ever factory turbo 260s?
Yes, C models. There were about 25 of them made.
Yeah.
Yep. The C models, the later C models, the factory turned them out with the cowling modification to accept the turbo there, whether they were shipped turbo normalized or not. And so there are a number of people who have retrofitted later Cs that were shipped from the factory as regular aspirated Cs into turbo normalized Cs, partly because the cowling was already set up to take it.
So that's why the vast majority of turbo Comanches we see are of the C model.
I actually think that there's more twins that I've seen.
Oh yeah, and twins, yeah.
Turboed, but I actually don't know the answer to that. Adam, Kristen may know more.
That's a correct statement for single engineer, for singles, not necessarily for the twin. There are by far more turbo twin Comanches than there are, I think, single Comanches, by probably a factor of 3 or 4.
Oh yeah, because they shipped the PA39 turbo, didn't it?
Well, PA30 starting in 66 was a factory option, and it was an STC-able option for previous Comanches.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm. So I want to bring a question in. So we were talking about break-in, and Linda Reaver asked that they're seeing high CHTs on their #1 cylinder, especially on climb out, with about 121 hours on an overhauled IO 540. Linda, do you want to unmute and just explain a little bit more? Because you also mentioned having a new starter at the same time as your overhaul.
So we got the newer, smaller, like SX type starter, and we're still struggling in our last 2 annuals, which we just completed an annual. Our mechanic has worked to try to fill in some of those holes because he seemed to think that maybe, you know, with the difference in size with the newer starter, that maybe that's why like the airflow wasn't as good. But we seem to have the max. Been looking at our graphs on the engine monitor. We have a JPI engine monitor, and we see it looks like the extreme of the cylinder temperature. So you're almost pushing max limit, like they're like 439, 440s, something like that. So almost hitting the alarm. Usually it comes down, but it's still much higher than the rest of the CHTs, and all the rest of them are doing fine. They bore scoped the engine now just, you know, recently with the annual, and said everything looks fine with the cylinders. All new baffling was put in when the engine was overhauled, which supposedly everybody was checked off on, says it's okay. So I'm just trying to sort this out and see what everybody else here thinks.
What model Comanche?
Sorry, 260B. It's a 1967.
Well, first of all, the starter is nothing to do with your CHTs. Absolutely nothing.
Okay.
Has no more relevance than what model phone you have in your purse. Totally separate.
Mm-hmm.
The actual red line of CHT is 500, regardless of what the engine monitor is set at.
Mm-hmm.
But for a number 1 cylinder, 430 to 450 and climb, you know, unless you're looking at pretty extreme ambient temperatures, that's a little high.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Kristen, just to clarify, it's their number 1.
Yeah, it's the
Which
number
is
1.
odd because that's the one that's located up at the front.
It should be
Really? I never knew that.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to talk about like how to suck eggs.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's especially high temperature, you know, for your front right-hand cylinder.
Yeah, correct.
What kind of speeds are you climbing out at?
I mean, we're doing what the book says. Like, you know, we're doing like, you know, 10 to 120. We've tried like lowering the nose to see if that really makes a difference. Climb out slower. You know, we don't have a crazy tight strip to get in and out of. So that's not an issue. And it seems like it's still staying this way. And we've tried changing the probe because we thought maybe like the probe was bad. And there's a new probe for the JPI monitor, and it still seems to be doing the same. And you know, when we've talked to other folks, they said, oh well, it's got to be baffling. But all the people, you know, here I'm in SoCal, go to now to Howard. I had Mike Passwater at El Monte previously, and you know, we haven't been able to put our finger on it, but it seems concerning. Although, as I say, they say now they borescoped the engine the last, you know, year, this annual and the year before, and say it looks fine. All the compressions are fine. We're not burning oil or having any issues like that.
How much time are you getting on a quart of oil?
Oh, we've got probably at least I don't know, like 10 or 15 hours at least. It just really doesn't burn oil.
Yeah, you know, yeah, I'd really have to look at the baffling and I mean, the baffling isn't so much the issue as the baffle seal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one thing though, the front cylinder usually, you know, will run cooler.
Yes, that's what I thought.
You know, so I mean, that's a little weird. You you know, you might, one thing you can try
Mm-hmm.
is to stick a trouble light or something up behind the engine as high as you can get it to sit. You know, close the cowling and look in from the inlets and see if you
Okay.
see a lot of light, any light coming through, which tells you where the baffle seals are not sealing.
Okay. 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 So look
Uh,
at the inlet. Okay.
that would, you know, that would
Okay.
probably be my first look at it.
Okay.
I mean, in the end of the day, you know, 440 to 445 and just on climb. What do they do when you level off? Where do they sit when you level off?
So they probably stay about 380, maybe 3 to 400 sort of max. It's much better seemingly when we're leveling out. It's still hotter than all the rest of them. All the rest of the cylinders, we can run them, get them down like, 350 to 380, no problem.
And the number one,
Yes,
the other ones are running 380. What's the number one running?
running like, 400 to 410 or 15.
Well, it should run cooler. I mean,
Mhm.
410, 415 isn't going to hurt the engine.
Mhm.
So you know, I'm not worried that you're burning up your engine here.
Mhm.
But I am wondering about the cooling patterns. And
Yes.
it's very hard for me to say without looking at the overall installation, you know, how the inner cylinder baffles are set, et cetera. Do you have the stock cowling?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so you don't have an aftermarket cowling arrangement, so.
No. No.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah, it's hard for me to say more without looking at the installation.
Mhm.
But you know,
Yep.
I'd be interested in to see whether that whether you've got leakage around the baffle seals, and see if you
Okay.
can improve that overall, and then see what that does for you.
Okay.
Because that's easier and cheaper to do. You know, a lot of things. So
Yeah.
I would start with
Well,
that.
yeah, and that's where like kind of the mechanic sort of felt like he was seeing more of a opening around, since changing the to a new sort of less bulky type starter that's, we had to put in.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
starter is on the other side. If that,
Mhm.
first of all, starter never affects anything. And if it
Yeah.
did affect anything, it would affect number 2 cylinder, not number 1 cylinder.
Okay.
So, I
Okay.
mean, you know,
Yeah.
he's not even only barking up the wrong tree, he's in
Yeah.
the wrong forest.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you
I
know,
I appreciate your insight because we're trying to kind of figure this out, and it's been challenging to multiple folks to try to
yeah,
figure out
I
how we.
would look at the overall, you know, efficiency of the cooling. I mean,
Okay.
you know, I love the original single
Mhm.
Comanche cowling with the big smiley, but it's
Yes.
not the best for cooling in the world. No
I'm
question about it.
surprised. I'm surprised that big open mouth at the front isn't very good for cooling. Is the 400s cowling with the two smaller sort of nostrils? Is that better for cooling? Because I hear they have problems on the rear two cylinders in climb.
It in general, it probably is. I haven't made a study of it. There are not enough 400s out there. The cooling the rear cylinder in climb is a factor of having 8 cylinders.
Hmm.
You know, that last cylinder is way back there.
Yeah.
You know, this idea just came in. Check your wiring. Is it possible that your number 1 and number 5 wires could possibly be reversed, because normally it's the number 5 that tends to run hotter.
Mm.
And
That's a
another
good
thing
point.
is,
Yeah. I mean, we could check. I mean, they've been back and forth, and we did do a swap initially to try to see if there was something with the probe, but we've had a new probe put in. So I don't know. We'll give that one a thought too. So
yeah, I hadn't thought of it.
And
And so I
see
just
if
want
that
to
makes
thank
sense.
Sam for sending that one over, because that came from Sam.
Okay, thanks everybody for your input. Thanks Kristen for your help. So appreciate everybody's insight. So
Oh, we all sympathize. We know how frustrating it is to chase something like this where you're like, wait, what? Why is
Right.
mine this one hotter
Right.
than the other ones? Yep.
right.
Especially with it being the
Right.
front. I mean,
Well,
I find that quite strange with it being the front one, considering that
Yeah.
is the
Yeah.
one that's in direct contact with the airflow. Well, not quite direct, but that's the
Right.
closest
I
one.
mean-
So I think that wiring issue could be the biggest option.
It's much worse, like obviously on the initial climb out with obviously the full power. It's better, but still a bit higher with cruise.
Once we get to altitude, once we level off, it comes to pretty much the same. All of them are the same. It's dramatic on just one.
Hi, Howard.
Yeah.
Merry
Okay.
Christmas and
Okay,
happy
well,
Hanukkah.
We'll take your suggestions and have them go back and look at those bafflings and this baffle seals in particular. So thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
So
And Merry Christmas to everybody.
are cracks on the baffles of a concern to people when they turn up to their aircraft? Because I remember my 180 Giaxma used to have possibly one of the most cracked baffling I've ever seen. Not baffling, sorry. Metal section. When you look front on the aircraft, you got the metal like I think baffling's probably the best word for them.
The airbox.
No, I mean, the best term for that, the metal part is the baffling, and it's the baffle seals that are the rubber, parts.
Yeah.
If you,
Because I remember it being really cracked and and dented and not looking very good on the front of Giaxma.
yeah,
But most
well,
of the plane was quite rotten anyway.
it was designed to last 20 years, not 60 years.
Do anyone still make those front pieces for people if they're a perishable part? Then, well, not quite perishable, but if they're a part that is obviously breaking, surely someone must be manufacturing those to
There's a
replace them.
company up in Alaska that'll make them. Right offhand, I don't know the name, but if you post the question, you find out. Matt Kirk used to make absolutely gorgeous ones, but he decided that was too much annoyance for too little money.
Yeah. It's just really interesting to see the kind of gaps that seems to be plaguing Comanche pilots now. It seems to be the same things, the same parts over and over and over again.
Well, so if you post on Facebook, Kristen's right. Matt Kirk was making gorgeous baffles. Then there's somebody else who just started to make them. And if you post a question to the Piper Comanche Facebook group, you may get an answer.
I'll probably ask that closer to the time I actually need to change any, rather than asking now randomly.
Actually, there's a couple. I think there's one guy on the Comanche Facebook who's been making a few. But then there's another company up in Alaska that makes baffles for numerous different aircraft.
Hmm.
And I don't know the name of them offhand. I've heard it, but my old brain hasn't retained it because I didn't need to retain it.
It's just interesting with Matt Kirk taking a step back, obviously, as he's getting older. I had a lovely chat with him about a week ago. And it's just really interesting to see what kind of gaps are being left now that support might be needed, and starting up a business, it could be interesting to try and help fill those gaps, which could then come directly handy in with what we do anyway, especially considering we've got mechanics and everything now as well.
I've talked with Matt. I've talked with some of the people interested in picking up what Matt's doing, and the connections that are being made there have to do with the fact that Matt did beautiful, beautiful work by hand. and there's some interest in picking up the work and adding machinery and computers to some of the work that he did by hand.
See, I would also be interested in picking up that work. Yeah,
Well,
it's,
A
You
backlog.
know, when it comes to Matt, you know, my advice is that if you have a long neglected transmission, send that to Matt before he retires. Even
Right,
though
well,
it's not
I need to
causing
get
you
those
any
off the
problems,
400 now.
send it to
then.
Matt before he retires, because
Yeah, I think I
once
need to get
Matt's done with it, you're good for 20 or 25 years.
That's really interesting then. So I probably think actually might be a good idea to get the 400 up on jacks within the next month or two. Just get that transmission off and sent. Even if we can't do anything else, at least we've got that sorted.
Yeah, Matt is one of the people that, well,
Yep.
you know, maybe the paperwork
Pete's
isn't as
handing
good
over.
as they
Give me
would
1
like
second.
in Europe. But, you know, I would trust me, I would trust my family, I would trust anybody to Matt's work, regardless of, you know.
I've only ever heard good things about Matt. So I mean, I spoke to him myself and I found him to be pretty amazing as well. So I would probably like to get that done. Do you know how much it costs roughly for him to do that work?
Depends on the transmission. Depends on whether you got a Dukes or a Dura.
I don't know. I haven't had the chance to look at it yet.
Do we have other questions from people who are actually trying to fix flying airplanes? And if
Thanks,
not,
CJ.
can I invite people? Well, no, the reason I'm asking is because we've got you know, we've got people here on the call.
I know.
On what was to be a Christmas mic. And I'd like to invite people to just jump in and say, hi, it's Christmas and you're here to have a Christmas hello. Celebrate our Comanches.
My apologies. Kristen's just got so much knowledge that every time I talk to her, I just try and pick as much as I can.
Absolutely.
John, I like your hat.
Thank
Mine's
you.
on the back.
I didn't wear the rest of the suit right at the moment, but that's available too.
You've got the beard to suit as well.
Got mine back here.
I've been growing. Ah, yes.
Merry
I've been
Christmas from Europe.
working on the beard for a while.
I'd like to add a little bit more information to what I was saying before about the rivets on the bottom of the fuselage that were not in my airplane. They all came out of the factory with those rivets, and those rivets rivet the outside aluminum to the structure inside, and they are part of the monocoque construction. And if they're not there, go to Comanche Gear and look at the pictures he's got of where the airframe or the structure inside bent and was destroyed or wrecked because there were no rivets there. So you might want to just go look and stick your head under your airplane and see if they're there. I'm done.
This is Pete again. I'm thinking that pretty soon here I'm going to end the recording. Not going to end the chance to have a chat and stuff like that because I'm not going to end the actual Zoom session. But yeah, I think with that I'm going to say Merry Christmas to everybody and turn off the recording.